Hello everyone, I'm Tim from Tim's PC and I build custom PCs to suit anyone's needs or budget. I also live stream all my builds and repairs for transparency and educational purposes. So if you would like to get an awesome new PC and you'd like to get put together live, send me a message today. Alright, so tonight we're going to be building Billy's PC. So Billy's been waiting ages to get like a decent gaming PC, so it's finally happening for the guy. So we're going to put this together tonight, and he's that keen he's driving up from the Gold Coast to pick it up later tonight, if all goes well here and we don't have any dead on arrival parts. One good thing that I can tell you straight away about this build is that this particular board has no issues, and I know this because I had a referral from another business down south. Customer had a PC that wasn't turning on, and I had to diagnose it and ended up pulling everything out of the motherboard that was on there and plugging it all into this motherboard because it was the only other B550 that I had lying around. So I actually got CPU and RAM and everything to post on that board, so I know that this motherboard definitely works, which basically means that I'm 99.9% sure the graphics card's fine, the power supply will be fine, the CPU's going to be fine. Not really any other component here that's going to cause problems, so should be a pretty straightforward build. So obviously we've got our motherboard here, so we've got an Aorus Elite V2 B550 chipset motherboard. So we'll have a look at that in a bit more detail when we unbox it, but I've done a few builds in this board, so you're probably going to be pretty familiar with that one. For our graphics card, we've got the MSI Gaming X RTX 3060 card. So I've installed one of these before. It's a really good looking card, and MSI do make really good graphics cards in terms of their performance and their ability to overclock and all of that kind of stuff as well. They kind of pride themselves on that. Back in my day when I started like buying computer parts off eBay as a young teenager, MSI was like the cheap brand. Bit like how BioStar is these days, kind of thing. Like it was on that tier, and then I watched MSI sort of slowly get better and better and better, and I've had many MSI boards over the years because older me from 10-15 years ago, the rationale with PCs was different back then. It wasn't always about buying high performance machines. That was generally a waste of money. It was generally a good idea to buy like older technology when the price was marked down and get good prices to performance and stuff like that. Whereas these days, it's all about getting the highest performance parts that you can get, really. Hey Dominic, how you going? And Billy's here watching. He's mad keen for this build, so like I said, he's keen to even drive up here like after it's done to pick it up tonight. So super keen. So we've got a Ryzen 5600X. So this is one of the best gaming CPUs in the world. So this guy here pretty much performs on par with all of the other Ryzen 5000 series SKUs when it comes to gaming. So on a budget, if you've got about $550 to spend on a gaming CPU, this is pretty much the sweet spot to buy into. If you've got a little bit more money, you can go the Ryzen 5800X, which is also a really good chip for gaming. It's got those extra game, but maybe you got a drone or something like that, you want to edit some footage on that, the extra 2 cores will give you an advantage with that. So that's always an option. 5900 and 5950X are still sort of long-term unavailable at this stage. And so this one here, it's actually just a CPU and a tray. This is actually a box from a Ryzen 5000 series SKU that I installed previously, and I've just used it here today so you can sort of see the parts that we're installing. If I just hold up a CPU and a tray, it's not very sort of visual, is it? So we've also got a couple of other things here. So we've got 16 gigabytes of Aorus 3200 megahertz CAS latency 16 memory. So this is good value RGB memory, this stuff. Decent performance as well. And we've got a 1TB Crucial P1 SSD for our storage. And of course, we have a 750 watt, 80 plus rated power supply. So this will allow Billy to upgrade to an RTX 3080 or something like that if he wants to, if he gets into it and decides, hey, I really want to step this up, because he's already got the Ryzen 5600X CPU, so he's not going to be bottlenecked by his CPU anywhere. He can just safely upgrade. He can just take the 3060 out, sell it, and then put in a 3080, and he doesn't have to worry about, oh, will my rig handle it? Yeah, he's got a 750 watt power supply. You can just wire it up and plug it in. So happy days. Well, of the Ryzen 5000, well, we're just going to have to wait and see what the final benchmarks look like on the Intel 11th gen, but Intel doesn't have anything that performs at the level of Ryzen 5000, at least for gaming, in a pure gaming benchmark, not without overclocks and stuff applied. So I've got an i9 9900K, and I can get that. I can get it to run at 5.1 gigahertz all cores and doing 5.2 on 2 cores with like voltage at maximum and all that kind of stuff, and temps are ridiculously high. And I can maybe get to 602, 603 on a quick CPU ID benchmark, whereas this will just get to 630, 640 just out of the box for single core performance. So maybe Intel, maybe the i9 11900K that's due out in a few days, maybe that will be somewhat in the ballpark of the Ryzen 5000 series SKUs for gaming, but there's not really a direct equivalent. But a little point to note with everything I've just said there is that we're talking about a very, very, very small amount of difference in overall gaming performance. We're talking about less than 10% between them. And for an average player, if you're not right into this enthusiast shit, and you're not a serious gamer, you're probably not going to notice the difference between whether you got like an i9 9900K or a Ryzen 5000 series SKU. Sorry, not a 9900K, a 10900K or an 11900K. But we haven't seen the data on 11900K officially yet. There's been some leaks and stuff like that, but it's not official. We've seen 11700K because a retailer managed to get a hold of some in Europe and they put them on the market early. And once a CPU gets sold through like a retail store, there's no embargo on reviewing it and talking about it and stuff like that, because if it was purchased at a retail store, all bets are off. But there's an embargo on talking about the new CPUs before they come out. So we'll just have to wait and see what the final is for that. But like I said, you know, realistically these days it's going to be pretty hard to make a case for an Intel chip unless it's a case of price to performance, because they're going to have to take up that position in the market. Because if a buyer comes to me with thousands of dollars to spend on a computer and they want to do this, they want to do that, I'm not biased towards any brand. I don't give a shit about brands. I just get my customers the best like quality and price for that, like the best performance for their dollar essentially. And so if Intel or Ryzen tick those boxes at their particular budget for their build, then I'm going to recommend they get that. So it's that simple. So Intel will have to have like more cores, better multi-core performance at a lower price, or they have to have equal or better than the single core performance of Ryzen 5000 series. Yeah, to make the case for it, because everything comes down to those dollars, right? And what you're getting for your money as to what I will recommend. So I'll change my recommendation. Like, I could recommend one thing one week, and if there's substantial changes in the market, new products come out and things start to move around, my suggestion could be completely different in 2 weeks. Because I look at prices and shit all day, so I'm just constantly looking and reading and all that kind of thing. So I'm stay up to date with what's going on in the market so I can give people the best recommendations. So anyway, this is the Antec D600 Flux case. You've probably seen me build a few PCs in this case. It's actually an excellent value, decent built case. It comes with the 3 ARGB fans in the front. It's got an RGB and fan controller that comes standard, pre-installed in the back. It even has this vent down here, and it has the capacity to install a couple of fans above here, above the power supply and all that. So you can add another 3 RGB fans to it. So if Billy wants me to add them, I've got a 3-pack of RGB fans I can add in here if he wants to go the extra on that. So just let me know in the comments. Hey Nick, how you going? Good to have you with us. Brad's jumped on. Hey mate, how you going? Sorry your PC didn't get there. Blame Australia Post. I sent for $300 today, so what? Yeah. So $16.50, is it? That was like $500. Yeah, that's wholesale. So they're like $700 now. Oh. All right, so let's get onto this build. So, we've got a few things we'll grab out here. So we'll grab our little front panel connection header. I love this thing. Heard me rave about it before. Got some SATA cables here. Won't be using SATA cables. SATA cables over time as the M2 and PCIe interface becomes the new standard for our storage devices. Yeah. It's a bit of a pain though, like waiting for a PC, because like you pay for it and then you gotta wait for it to be built and delivered and all that kind of shit. Alrighty. Oh, peak COVID was the and stuff. People waiting ages, and I know people are waiting like things like 30 series cards and Ryzen 5000s, but yeah, I mean in general it's a lot better than it was. Alright, so let's have a quick look at Aorus B550 Elite V2. So starting at the top here, we've got a fan header, we've got 8 pins of CPU power. This CPU power header sort of controls all this stuff around the CPU. So our voltage regulation module, which is called VRM for short, and we've got our co-processors under this one here as well. So CPUs need co-processors, and as you put a more and more powerful CPU on a motherboard, it puts more stress on these surrounding components as it draws more power through here, and everything sort of gets stressed out a bit more. So on higher end motherboards, you'll always see these kind of heat sinks over this part, over these systems here. So I'm not going to go into all the technical details of that, but you can look it all up if you're interested. You've got the GeForce overlay up there on the screen. Alright, so over here we've got a couple more fan headers, so we've got a total of 3 now. So this one's coloured grey because it's designated CPU. So there's also another one here that says CPU opt, so CPU optional. The reason there's 2 there is because to get a high-end air cooler, you might actually have 2 fans on it, so you need 2 headers to plug into. So around here we've got 2 more headers up here. So we've got this one here, a 12-volt RGB header with 4 pins. And we've got this one here, looks like it should be 4 pins, but it's missing a pin. That's actually our 5-volt RGB header here. So they make it so you could accidentally plug the 12-volt onto the 5-volt, but you shouldn't be able to make the reverse mistake, because the 5-volt only has 3 pins. You can't get 3 holes over 4 pins. So And down here we've got our main ATX power. This is our 24 pin connection that powers basically everything else on the motherboard. So channel 1, these two slots here are channel 2, and so when we install our memory we'll always use channel 1 slot A and channel 2 slot A first. These are the first two places that the CPU goes to when it's looking for memory. So it's the first place it checks, so it's the first two slots that we use, so we get absolute maximum performance out of our memory. You could, if you did these two, I mean, it's not going to be a huge difference. At least you're in two different channels. If you had them both, if you had two sticks right next to each other in the same channel, you would lose performance.
You need to move that mouse because it keeps doing stuff on my computer.
I'll just turn it off.
Annoying.
That really annoyed her. Anyway.
It had emojis coming up, and then I was like, what?
What?
There was like some emoji thing, bar thing that had come up.
Oh, okay.
Clicking on.
My mouse must be going flat or something. Anyway, we've got two SATA ports here. We've got another two here. Like I said with SATA, it's becoming less and less and less common. So.
The office is open.
No, that's. Where's the keyboard? There you go. It'll be the keyboard. Anyway, so this thing here, this is where the chipset is. So this is the when they say a motherboard is a B550 or an X570 or whatever, that's the part that they're referring to. So this chip here is basically what interfaces all the other systems on the motherboard with the CPU. So it's all sort of going through the chipset before it goes to the CPU. So the CPU sort of does its own thing and just gets fed information. So what else we got down here? So these ones here, these are our front panel connectors. So that's where this little bracket slots in once we wire it up with our cables. These two little pins at the top here. So what these are the clear CMOS headers. So if you're a bit of an overclocker, you may consider, if your case has a reset button, you may consider actually connecting that reset button to that clear CMOS header, and that way whenever you make a mistake with your overclocking, you can just press the reset button and it will just clear the CMOS. And the CMOS is the information that is stored on the motherboard about the configuration and all the settings on it. So if you make a mistake and you change something that you shouldn't change and your computer won't turn on or whatever, clear the CMOS just like it is right now out of the box. So pretty handy. This little guy here is a USB Type-C front panel connector. It will not be in use on this PC. We don't actually have one installed. It could be hard. It could be very easily hard mod. I do actually have some cables. So if you do want USB-C, we could hard mod it, but I'd need your computer for longer than tonight to do that. I've got to get the drill out and shit. Anyway, this one here is a USB USB 3 front panel connector. So that one will be in use. We've got two USB 2s down here. We've got trusted platform module header there, which will not be in use. Got another fan header down here. Two more RGB headers, an LED header, and this one down here is our front panel audio. So always have our audio system down this part of the motherboard on pretty much any motherboard that you're going to see. They try to keep the audio system as isolated from other electrical signals on the motherboard as possible. That's why they use these like high quality capacitors down here that are very well insulated and stuff. It's all about protecting the audio signal from other electrical interference. And so if we come around the back here, down that end of the rear of the motherboard, and this has been a standard design for years. You've probably never seen a PC that doesn't have the audio in that position on the back of the motherboard. So We've got 2.5 gigabit Ethernet right on the motherboard here, so future-proof right there. Standard is only 1 gigabit Ethernet, so you'll probably find that your router will not support 2.5 gigabit Ethernet, and if you go into the settings it'll be running at 1, but if you had the capacity there, you've got 2.5 gigabit Ethernet on the board. You've also got 5 USB 3.2 ports, they're all type A. There's a flash BIOS button, you've got a HDMI port and display port there. Neither of them will be in use in your build, so I'll actually put plugs in them right now. Do I have a... Yep. Alright, so I've just put plugs in both of them because they're not going to be in use with this build. And we've also got 2 USB type 2, sorry, USB 2 ports there. So they're slower. That's where you just plug like your keyboard and mouse into. These are the fast ones. So, and yeah. So that brings us basically just to this middle part of the motherboard that we haven't talked about. So there's another 12 volt RGB header there, and there's a fan header there. So that brings the total number of fan headers on this motherboard to 5. So we're going to have... We may have more fans than that, but there's ways that we can get around that. So we've got 2 M2 slots here. Believe that only this top one is full speed. So this is an X4, that's an X2. Both of these slots here, they might be X16 length, but they're only connected X4 the way along. And we've also got just one little X1 slot there. And this one up here, the one that's made of metal, this is our main PCIe X16 slot. So it's X16 length and it's actually connected all the way along. These ones aren't connected all the way along. If you could see it from my angle, you could see exactly what I mean. You can see these little bits of metal that are connecting the pins in the actual slot there with PCB. So yeah, you can clearly see, I can just look at it from this angle and go, even if they're all the same length and look the same to you, I can just go, yep, that's an X4, that's an X8, that's an X16, that's an X4. I can see it just from how far it's connected along. It's really clear to see. So if you hold the board from this angle and look down on them, you'll see what I mean. So that's pretty much our motherboard. So we can get onto it and start prepping it up. So like I said, this is just a box that I've used so you can see that we've got a Ryzen 5600X CPU. This is how the CPU gets shipped to me. So just in a plain packet like this, it assumes that you'll add your own cooling solution to it. So in this case, we're just going to be using a stock cooler on this. Where would you plug a capture card? Okay, so capture cards will either be an X1 PCIe Gen 2 normally, and 4K one will be an X4. So if you had this motherboard, you could plug your capture card into any of those slots. If it was an X1, it'd fit in the little one, you could plug it into the little one. If it was a 4K one, you'd have an X4, and you could plug it into either of those slots. If you didn't have a graphics card and you had onboard graphics on your CPU, you could plug your X4 one even into this X16 one. It really doesn't matter. You can plug a smaller PCIe device into a bigger slot. You just obviously can't break the laws of physics and plug a bigger card into a smaller slot. But if you plug a small one in and it's only got connections to X1 of the way along the slot, it will just go, oh, it's just an X1 device, and it will treat it as such. The rest of the pins in the slot will just be inactive. So that's the good thing about it. So if you've got like a little Wi-Fi adapter and you don't have one of these little slots for it, it doesn't matter. You can put it in the big one. It's fine. So with our Ryzen CPUs, I'm just going to do best practice here as I always do. So we want to make sure that all these little delicate pins are as in line as possible. It's very easy to damage these pins, and you don't need too much, like too many out of alignment to cause a problem. So you definitely don't want to drop it. And so on the bottom there's always a little golden triangle in one of the corners, and there's a tiny one on the upside of the CPU, and there's a little triangle in the corner of the socket, little bar that goes up. So raise the bar, just line it up in the correct spot, and it should just drop into the socket. And so once it's dropped into the socket, just touch it around the corners, just making sure that all of the corners are flush with the outside of the socket. And once that's done, you can just drop this bar down, and we have our Ryzen 5600X installed and ready to go.
So cool, because I'm kind of looking into Elgato HD60 Pro.
Oh yeah, well HD60, that's yeah, that's just the 1X one. So it'd be like the small interface on this graphics card that you can probably barely see. And so that's the little tiny one that would go into this little slot here, and that's fine. You could plug your capture card in like that. But if you had a capture card that was the small one, you didn't have the small slot, you could plug it into this big one, and that would be fine, if the clip at the back doesn't get in the way. But yeah, that's completely fine. You can always plug a smaller device into a bigger slot. With PCIe, this is only for PCIe. Got to be careful what I say sometimes now. Give people the wrong advice. Anyway, this is our SSD now. So Billy hasn't built a computer for a while. He might not have seen one of these bad boys. Anyway, so this is it. This is a 1 terabyte NVMe SSD. As you can see, it's very thin. You can get these up to 8 terabytes capacity, and they're very fast. They're much faster than like the slower. Where is my SSD? They're much faster than these like older SATA SSDs, the ones that are in these like plastic boxes essentially. And so the advantage with these is they don't communicate through the SATA bus and all that. They communicate through the PCIe system, which is much faster. So the other SATA SSDs, they're limited to like 600 megabytes a second. Whereas these guys are limited to, you know, gigabits per second. So it's totally different ball game. So if you've got one of these, you're gonna have a very snappy experience in Windows and stuff.
Billy says this is my first PC and coming from consoles going from PS4 to this.
Oh wow, yeah, okay. This is gonna be you'll definitely appreciate what you got. Yeah, hell yeah. And so just
James says love you.
Hey mate, how you going? Congratulations on the job. This guy is commenting. This guy, he got my old job. Yeah, he got my old job. So I'll have all the hints for him. Anyway. Nah, good work, man. I'm glad it was you. Alrighty, so here's our memory. So we've got 16 gigabytes Aorus 3200 megahertz CL16 memory. So with the RGB lighting and stuff on the top. So we've got 4 slots here, but we've only got 2 sticks. So we're going to use this first slot. You can call it slot 1 if you want. It's technically what they call channel 1 slot A. And then we're going to put the next one in slot 3, or what they like to call channel 2 slot A. So there we go, there's our memory installed. So all I was doing there was just pressing down nice and evenly on both sides until it snaps in place.
You don't have good health.
Don't I?
No. This is 7 times happened this week.
I need something. I need better internet. So what I'm doing now is I'm just removing the standard AMD mounting brackets, because we're going to be putting on a Wraith Stealth cooler. So this is a more beefy AMD cooler, not by much. It's going to be fine for this 5600X. It's not fine for a 5800X, and it's not fine for anything else above that. You really want like a Wraith Prism cooler as a minimum. And so we're just going to take some thermal compound. And so if you were just getting one of these Wraith Prism coolers, say you got this with your CPU, it probably already has thermal paste on the bottom of it, so you probably can skip this step. But this one, this particular Wraith Prism cooler, because I didn't get a cooler with it. This is a recycled one, so this has come off another PC. This has come off someone who upgraded their cooler to a liquid cooler, and yeah, basically we're just going to be using it again here. So it's had the thermal paste that was on it originally. It's been cleaned off, and now we're just left with a clean bit of aluminium on the bottom. So I've put some thermal compound back. And so what I like to do with these, you got where it says AMD there, so I like to try and keep that in line with other writing on the motherboard. I find that's the best way to do it. So I've got Aorus and Team Up Fight On written there from that orientation, so we're going to have AMD from the same orientation there. And just gonna yeah. Okay, so got 4 holes. We've got the backing plate already on there on the motherboard, ready to go. So we just line up these 4 screw holes.
Jake said he got stuck at the case.
He got stuck at the case. Oh well, we'll get to all that. So I don't know exactly what case you have. I need a drink.
My coffee.
Yeah, coffee go good.
Caramel one?
Yeah, caramel. Go the caramel. Yeah, I pretty much live on iced coffee and V. Iced coffee, V, lollies. But I'm not like that dude who ate all the licorice and died from it. I hate licorice, I just eat normal lollies. So I'll just die from, like, you know, diabetes or some shit. They'll just like, they'll have to take me foot. No. No, I'll get a kick up the ass from the doctor before then. Alright, so we've got our CPU installed.
So Clemtech B250 TG.
Oh yeah, that'll be a pretty standard case. Alrighty, so we've got our board prepped, our CPU cooler installed, our M2, our memory. So that is all good to go. We're ready to put that in our case now. So now we've just got a case to worry about. So I didn't see, did Billy want to put, did you want to put the extra fans in there? So I've got, I'll show you the fans.
Billy's a Dare Ice coffee man. So I drink Dare Ice coffee too. Triple shot. So good.
So I got these Leon Lee RGB fans, and so if you wanted some extra RGB fans, we could put one on the back here, or 3 on the front, or something like that. I don't know what you want to do, but yeah, I've got them here, and they're $25 each. So just let me know if you want to add any extras on there. Also, the other thing that's not on this build is Wi-Fi. I've got like cheap Wi-Fi cards for $30 as well. I can put one of them on there as well. So just let me know. And yeah, Billy says he's a Dare Ice coffee man. Yeah, so was I for years and years and years. Dare. But yeah, then I tried these Norco ones, and it's a Robusta Arabica blend, and yeah, I just like the coffee taste of it, if you know what I mean. And now I've been drinking them for ages, and I have Dare, and I'm like, oh, it doesn't taste right. But my wife will say the same thing about these. She'll go, oh, it doesn't taste right.
Yeah. Nick says I don't mind the odd occasion energy drink.
Billy says, what's the Wi-Fi for? So if you want to wirelessly connect to the internet, you can either plug in a cable, like what you're probably doing with your PS4, or you could like have a wireless connection to the internet. So I don't have any like of like the really fast ones. I've just got like sort of regular ones. So if you were planning on just hooking up by cable, just hook up by cable. It's going to be better than the ones that I have on hand at the moment. Alrighty. So to start with our case, we'll just take all the side panels off. Get rid of that. Okay. So as we can see around the back, they do include this controller, which is excellent. If every case included a controller, it'd be great. Now you can use these if you want. I just personally just do not like them. I don't know. Been doing cable ties for so many years. That's what I like to use. I feel I do a better job and it looks neater if I use cable ties.
Nick says that's like when Jack ran Ice coffees, we used to drink them here, so we went to Breakers and we went back to the Jacarandas and now they just taste like sour milk.
Yeah, so Jacaranda, if people aren't familiar, Jacaranda's it's a strange brand.
It's a cult following in Ipswich.
It is. Well, it's Ipswich. It is Ipswich.
Yeah.
That's where the brand's from.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's Ipswich's own iced coffee. So if you're not from Brisbane, if you're listening in from like say Sydney or some shit, and you don't really know what Brisbane is, you don't know what the locations are. Imagine if like Parramatta or like Penrith or somewhere out there had their own brand of iced coffee. Wouldn't that be like a little bit, whoa, okay. Like distributed by like, you know, Parmalat and dairy farmers and shit, like majors own this brand. It hasn't been converted into like another national brand. It's kept alive by the massive cult following in Ipswich.
Yeah, on the Sparky, so I'm going to cables from my network point, which is anyway.
Yep,
Nice.
sweet, awesome.
He says, for the fans I'm maxed out on cash, mate, I'll probably upgrade in a year for a better card
Yeah,
for fans.
yeah, absolutely. No, well, I mean, you don't, honestly, man, you don't really want to have, I wouldn't really want to have too many more fans on here than what you're going to have. You're just going to suck a lot more dust into your case. And you're not going to have, you won't have any issues with temperatures and stuff with this configuration either. So, yeah, happy days, really. It's just some people are all like, they're like, oh, but I want mine to look like this, and yeah. So that's why I try to have things on hand, because I know sometimes people just sort of forget to ask for them. So anyway, we've got this power supply, and what we're going to do with this, we're going to be mounting it face up. So the reason why we're doing that is we've got 3 fans on the front drawing air in, and we've got this fan on the back that's going to be sucking air out. And then we've got a power supply down here, and this fan's also going to draw air from the case and suck it out. Yep. What's that, sorry?
So Fred says, hey guys, Friday is here.
Hey Fred, how you going? Yes, Friday is on us.
Jake says, I've got a cool last power supply and it has so many cords.
Yeah, well we'll go through, I'm just installing this power supply now, so if you're looking to do this is what you want to do. You got 4 screw holes. You just have to consider whether you're going to have it face up or face down in the case. Just think about your airflow, okay? Think about the number of fans that are sucking air in and the number of fans that are going to be sucking air out. You want to try to balance that as much as you can.
Nick says Farmers Union is a great iced coffee.
Farmers Union, so that's the mighty South Australians with that one.
It's not too bad.
It's all right.
We tried a lot of different coffees when we drove around Australia.
Yeah, we've driven around Australia twice. We've tried.
Northern Territory iced coffee, that was actually pretty good.
There is a brand. There's a brand of iced coffee in the Northern Territory. It's called Territory's Own Iced Coffee. It's made by Parmalat, and that's another like sort of localized iced coffee brand that's stayed strong because of the cult following. I mean, it's just all people drink out there.
But it's nice.
It's decent. It's decent. It tastes.
I drink that over jacaranda.
It tastes somewhere between an iced coffee breaker and jacaranda. That's where I'd put the flavor profile of Territory's Own. Sorry, we're not like iced coffee enthusiasts or anything.
This iced coffee.
Stuff of liquid gold. Okay.
Thirsty at the same time. Iced coffee.
So we've got this big mass of cables here to sort out. So you're probably not going to need all of the cables that you've got coming from power supply. So if you look at the back of the power supply box, it'll probably give you a detail of exactly what cables are with it and all that. But there are basically just a few that you're going to need to pay attention for. So doesn't matter what PC. These first two I'm going to show you, everyone needs these particular cables. Doesn't matter what PC you're building, you're going to need these particular cables. You need this. So we're going to take that, we're going to put it over there to the side. And so the next one we're going to need is our CPU power. It doesn't matter what system you've got, what configuration you've got, you're going to need these two cables, CPU and ATX power. So get them and try to untangle them from the other cables as much as possible. And then, so these ones are going to be needed for every PC build. So get them to the side, then you'll have this mass of other cables here to sort through. So the next one you are probably going to have to pay attention for if you're building a gaming PC, unless you've got a GTX 1650 or something like that. You're going to need this one. You're going to need a PCIe power cable. So that's this 6+2 connector. It's got these two little pins on the end here. So if you've got a graphics card that needs power, you're going to need one of these. So for this build, we're just going to need the one cable here, I believe. Or is this the one that had two? No, this is the one that had two. So we're going to use two cables. So observant people may notice that there are two plugs on the one cable, but if we use two different cables, there's a maximum amount of power that can be drawn down a particular cable. It doesn't matter that there's two plugs on it. So if we've got two power connectors on the graphics card, we're going to install the two power cables so that it's not going to be bottlenecked if we want to overclock it or get any extra performance out of it. So we're going to install the two cables there. And so other than that, with this particular build, we don't really need any of these other cables. We do have this SATA cable here that's coming from our fan and RGB controller. So we're going to need to power that. But see where it is? It's just there. It can just be plugged in there. So what we're going to do, if you have a hard drive or a solid state drive that is one of the SATA ones, you're going to need one of these cables. This is the SATA cable. It's got these flat black connectors. And the other one that you'll find, you'll usually have like two or more of these SATA ones. The other one you'll find is this big old school looking chunky one that has these four big holes in it. This is called a Molex connector. So you may or may not have fans or other devices that plug in with Molex. You'll just have to see if you'll need that. But basically these SATA and Molex cables, these are only needed if you've have RGB and fan controllers that require SATA power, or you have other devices that require a Molex power connection. And so for this build, we don't have any of that kind of stuff going on. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to tuck all this away and stick it back here like this. We're going to get a zip tie.
It says Jack Randos, I feel like they've seriously dropped the ball.
Yeah, well, I mean, Nick, it does depend on the retailer that you purchase it from and the quality of the cold chain. Yeah, so if it breaks the cold chain, for every 15 minutes that milk is left out of refrigeration, it loses approximately 1 day of shelf life. Manufacturers factor in about half hour to 45 minutes out of the fridge in the time between their production facility and getting to the retailer, and they also assume another 15 minutes between the retailer and home. So they factor in a 4-day buffer there. But if you go to like some small retailer and they're just like dodgy pricks with food safety and food handling, and they just leave stuff out for a couple of hours, yeah, it'll go gross. They'll taste yuck. And you really notice the taste. You can always tell fresh flavoured milk from like nearly out of date flavoured milk. You know, when you get marked down flavoured milk, it never tastes as good as buying one full price that's fresh, that's just been filled that day and all that. Hey Anthony, how you going? Good to have you with us. So anyway, we'll get back to it. So we've got these cables that we tied down, all the ones that we don't need for our build. We're just going to stuff them away down with the power supply. We just left this one SATA cable out here, and we're just going to plug that into our fan controller. Just like that. I'm going to undo these cables here. Because these cables here, this is a PWM fan header and a 5-volt RGB header, and so these plug into the motherboard, so all of these can be controlled with the software on the motherboard. And so right where our power supply is, and that'll be out of the way. And so now we're left with our graphics card, 24-pin ATX and CPU power, our cables to hook up from our RGB and fan controller, and our front panel connectors, USB and front panel audio over here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to pull these out. These are our front panels. I'm just going to put them over here, because the first thing I like to do, I like to try to sort out this mess. It's just not done well. No, it's just like it's a 3-minute job. Seriously, it's a 3-minute job to find my cable ties. I am running low on cable ties. Anyway, so these are all our RGB and fan cables. And so you might not have an RGB controller like this on your particular motherboard if you're building a PC for the first time. You might have to hook up your You may have a male and a female plug on your RGB cables. That's for daisy chaining. So you can look up some of my other videos about daisy chaining and stuff, but that's just running power through multiple cables. It's pretty easy. There we go, that already looks a little bit cleaner around there. What do you reckon? I reckon it does. So we've tidied up some of those existing cables there. We've got these cables there and our cables to plug in. We've also got these ones from around there. So now this is the point where I would say that we have pre-organized our cables at the back of our case. Everything's all plugged in. Oh, I've got this little cable tie here that we'll remove. And now it's time to just basically put everything in our case and connect it up. So you're always best to get all this stuff out the back organised before you start doing this, because it'll probably get a little bit tangled up in that process, and you'll just make, if it's already tangled, you're just going to tangle it even more. So get out of the way. And so we're installing a standard ATX motherboard here in an ATX case. The offsets are in the standard position and our holes are in the standard position. So if you're installing a motherboard, you need to make sure these offsets are in the correct location. It's important, you don't want any metal to be touching any of these points on the bottom of the motherboard where it shouldn't, or it can cause it to short out. So make sure all those offsets are in the correct spot. Now it's especially important if you're installing a micro ATX board, because there will likely be some screws and some offsets that you're going to have to change manually. Got a couple of Antac kits here. Just open these up into my tray. So we just got 9 bolts here for our ATX. And because we're not installing a liquid cooler, we don't have anything else to mount or anything in this for this build. We're not doing any extra fans or anything, so that makes it nice and simple. So we're at like 57 minutes now, I think. I've talked a fair bit during this. Oh, look at old Justin. Alrighty. So this will be a nice simple build. It'll be a nice clean look at the end as well.
So James says Tim's a star.
Yeah, I know.
Isn't he beautiful?
Oh, he's one of those kind of guys. He used to say, "Hey, sexy" to me back at Woolworths when I'd come into his store.
Well, you do have nice legs, so.
Righto.
Neil seems to think so.
Well, I know. It's a little bit strange, isn't it? What are they putting in the water down Gundagai way?
Glitter.
Apparently. All right. So this is going to be a very, very straightforward process from here, because an RGB controller out the back. So we've actually already plugged in our fan from, we've already plugged in our CPU fan at the front here, I should say. Oh fuck. Really? Can we turn the... Oh, I do. It's because of the time. Still like
Oh, now it's green.
getting through? Or is it better now or something? Anyway, we'll go and get these installed now, so we can do all this at the top of the board. Aha.
Tim,
Yeah.
because there's still lags here and there, but nothing too bad.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah, it's just Friday night, and I've only got 20 megabits of upload bandwidth. I used to have 40 when I was on fiber, and apparently now, because I'm on HFC, they reckon that I only get 20, but that's just not good enough.
Billy says it's stalling heaps for me, mate. I will have to run some facts through your house, mate. But if you want to, stop you.
Is anyone watching on YouTube? Maybe there's a lot of people on Facebook.
Oh, there is now.
Hey, if you're watching on YouTube, come over to Facebook because we've got stream health issues, so we're going to shut the YouTube one off and just go with the Facebook one tonight. Yeah, I would have heard that. You can cancel it now.
Are you sure?
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, it says on Facebook.
Yeah, it stays on Facebook. It's fine.